All right. So we are on the record. This is ERD case number CR2017000334 with a corresponding EEOC case number of 8462017071117C. I'm Administrative Law Judge Stephanie Brown. We're here for a hearing on the issue of probable cause involving the complainant, Fanny Dent, and the respondent, Sheboygan Senior Community, Inc. Before we begin with me kind of explaining the issues and explaining the process again, I just want to make sure that we have the parties' appearances for the record. Ms. Dent, I see you, and so you're appearing, and I just want to make sure for the record it's clear that you're going to be representing yourself here today. You don't have any attorney helping you with this matter today. All right. And for the respondent who is appearing. Oops, Attorney Hastings, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Attorney Matt Hastings is appearing on behalf of the respondent, Sheboygan Senior Community.
All right. And so, like I said, before we begin with testimony, I just want to go through and kind of explain how we got here and then as well as the process. And so that starts with me just making a note about the charge of discrimination in this case. Ms. Dent filed a charge of discrimination with the EEOC in January of 2017. Based on our file sharing agreement with the EEOC, the Equal Rights Division received a copy of that charge of discrimination on January 27th of 2017. Shortly thereafter, February 2nd, 2017, the Equal Rights Division sent a notice of charge providing a copy of the charge to the respondent, as well as just letting the respondent know that the EEOC was going to process the charge initially, which it did. And on May 30th of 2018, the EEOC issued a notice of right to sue, conciliation failure, notifying the parties that it was closing out its file and giving Ms. Dent an opportunity to file a claim in federal court if she chose to do so. Thereafter, the file was sent to our division, the Equal Rights Division, and we had communicated with Ms. Dent to see if she wanted the Equal Rights Division to review her charge of discrimination, which she did. And so after a review, an investigator for the Equal Rights Division issued an initial determination on July 29th of 2020, finding no probable cause to believe that Sheboygan Senior Community, Inc. violated the Wisconsin Fair Employment Law by discriminating against the complainant in the terms or conditions of employment because of race, color, creed, national origin, and because the complainant opposed a discriminatory practice under the Act, and then terminating the employment of the complainant because of race, color, creed, national origin, discharging the complainant because the complainant opposed a discriminatory practice, and then engaging in or permitting sexual harassment. Ms. Dent filed an appeal of that initial determination, which is why we are here today to have a hearing on the issue of probable cause for all of those claims. As I had mentioned during the final pre-hearing last week, because Ms. Dent, it is your burden of proof to show probable cause on all of those claims or any one of those claims. We'll start with your testimony first. And because you are not represented by an attorney, I'll start by asking you just some general questions about your complaint before I turn it over to you to provide additional evidence that you want me to consider regarding your claims. Attorney Hastings will have an opportunity to cross-examine you, and you'll have an opportunity after he is done doing that to kind of present any other evidence that you want to present, kind of relating to what his questions were of you. When you are done presenting all of your evidence, Attorney Hastings will have an opportunity to present the respondents, witnesses, and case in chief. I may have some questions for the respondents, witnesses, and Ms. Dent, you'll have an opportunity as well. If there's any questions you want to ask the respondents, witnesses, you'll have an opportunity to do that. When the respondent is done presenting its case, you'll have one last opportunity, Ms. Dent, to present any rebuttal evidence that you want me to consider. As I said during the final pre-hearing, just make sure both parties that whatever evidence you want me to consider when I'm making a written decision on this case, that you present the evidence today, or at least make an attempt to present that evidence. If a party has any objections to either questions being asked or any exhibits that are being entered into the record, make sure that you let me know that as well. And I'll make a decision whether or not to receive that evidence into the record at that time. Ms. Dent, do you have any questions about the process here today?
No, ma'am.
All right, Attorney Hastings, any questions about the process?
No, no questions.
All right, so then Ms. Dent, I'll start with your testimony. I do need to swear you in, so if you could just raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
All right,
I do.
you can put your hand down then. Thank you.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm just going to start with some basic questions, kind of based on what was in your discrimination complaint. And first of all, that usually just has me starting just to make sure that I have your current mailing address. So could you confirm for me your address, please?
Yes, my address is 611 North Water Street. I'm in apartment 207, and that's in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, 53081.
Okay. And then I had mentioned a number of different bases that you're alleging discrimination. So I just kind of want to go through those one by one. Again, just so we have on the record what those bases are and kind of how you identify under those bases. So the first one I see here on the charge of discrimination is race. So could you just identify for me how you identify your race?
I'm a Black African American.
Okay. So I think that answers the next question I was going to have about color. You identify as Black?
Yes.
Okay. And then national origin, were you born in this country then, Ms. Dent?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you also allege discrimination on the basis of religion. So what religion do you practice?
Christianity.
Okay. And how long have you been practicing Christianity? If you don't know the exact dates and things, if you kind of just can give me an estimate.
It'll be over 40 years.
Okay. And when you say I guess I use the word practicing, but are there certain like observances that you practice, or kind of how do you kind of demonstrate your belief in Christianity?
Basically, I demonstrated basically my actions of with respect and honor. Sometimes when things get a little difficult for me, I find a quiet space and I pray.
Okay.
I don't pray out loud. I don't
Okay.
pray in all these different tongues. I just pray.
Okay. All right then. I just want to get into a little bit of background history then about your employment with Sheboygan Senior Community. Do you recall when you began employment there?
I think it was in the mid of 2016.
Okay. And what position did you hold? I guess initially when you were hired, what position were you hired for, first of all?
Certified nurse's assistant.
And did you hold that position throughout your employment there then, or did you have a different job at some point?
No, I remained a CNA.
Okay. And did you have a certain work schedule? Either it be, certain hours of the week, certain days of the week. Did you have anything like that?
Yes, I worked third shift.
Which is what?
I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And I cut you off. Were you going to say that? I think it sounded like you were going to say that that's when you started. Those were your hours? Were those your hours
That was
throughout
my
your
hours.
employment?
Yeah, no, I was third shift.
Okay.
11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
All right. And did you have a supervisor or manager that you reported to?
Yes, I did.
Who was that?
Kathy.
Do you know or recall Kathy's last name?
I don't have my paperwork on me, but I know it starts with a W. We
Okay.
called her, yeah, we called her Miss Kathy. I called her Miss Kathy.
Okay, that's fine.
Hmm.
And I just want to say that if there is a question that I ask you or Attorney Hastings asks you and you don't know the answer, just let us know. You don't have to try to guess or anything like that.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Um, was she your only supervisor or did you report to anybody else besides Miss Kathy?
No, basically, Miss Kathy was the supervisor.
Okay. Do you know what her position or title was with Sheboygan Senior Community?
She was a registered nurse, a supervisor for the night shift.
So did she work the same hours you worked then?
Yes, ma'am.
And during the hours that you worked, were there any other CNAs or certified nursing assistants like yourself working those same hours?
Yes, because we had different units that we would work on, well, different sections, different sets that we would work on. So there were other CNAs there.
How many would typically work while you were working, if you can recall?
1, 2, 3, 4. On a good night, it will be 4
Okay.
because they have 4 different units there.
So if I'm understanding your testimony, then on a good night, you would have each CNA working one unit then, is that correct?
Right, right.
Okay. And were you typically assigned to work in the same unit, or did the unit that you were assigned to work in change each time you worked?
Actually, I was basically hired to work the rehab. On occasions when they had call offs, we would go to another unit to help out because there's no CNA, just the nurse.
So in addition to the CNAs, there was a nurse assigned to each unit as well then?
There's a nurse. Well, on a good night, there would be a nurse. Most of the time, one nurse used to have to make work both units, 2
Okay.
units. So if you're doing rehab, you have to go check on rehab in Maple. And if you're doing the other one, you will have to check on them too and residential.
Okay. So it sounded like there were 4 units and this residential section as well. Is that correct?
No, mm-mm. The
No.
residential is included in the 4, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know, were
Mhm.
there names for the 4 units?
Okay, we had rehab, we had Hickory. It was one more than residential. I can't think of
Okay.
the name. Mhm.
Okay. And how many patients, if you can recall, were in each unit?
Oh my God, it varies.
Okay.
Rehab will have the most patients. You can go up to over 20. Hickory, you can go up to maybe 17, 15, 17. The next unit was a small unit, so the highest there was maybe about 12 or 14. Residential, I can't really say because I never had the pleasure of working in residential.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. I just want to talk a little bit about then about what you wrote in the charge of discrimination about what happened to you during your employment. And so you
Hmm.
start by mentioning that during your employment, you were subjected to sexual harassment. Can you tell me kind of what happened that you believed was sexual harassment?
Well, one day, when I was working on a unit, the supervisor nurse, Kathy, W, and agency nurse, I can't think of her name right now, was coming down the hallway. At this time, I had finished up, it was a short shift. I finished up rehab and I had to go check on Hickory. So as I was checking on Hickory, they were walking down the hallway. She said, "Oh, hi, Fanny." I said, "Hello, ma'am." And she pulled her pants down and showed her hinder to me. And so I kind of finished up the residence. I walked to the next station where she was at, and I was going to ask her, why did she do that? And then she asked me, did I want to see her PUSSY? And I told her no. And she literally like pulled off her shoe and showed me a picture of a tattoo of a cat on her foot. At this time, I just did both of them and I walked back and finished my rounds up on rehab.
Okay. Do you recall when this happened, like a date or a month or anything like that?
No, I can't recall the exact date or month, but I know it was cold outside when this happened.
Okay.
So
Was there any other time when something similar to this happened?
far as them exposing themselves, no, ma'am. After that, I pretty much tried to stay away as much as possible.
And I just want to make sure because you had mentioned Kathy W. and an agency nurse, was it Kathy W. who did what you described, or was it the agency nurse?
Yes, ma'am. No, it was
Which one?
Kathy. It was
Okay.
Kathy, the supervisor, my supervisor at that time,
Okay.
which was really shocking to me. But I continued to work my shift.
Did you complain to anybody at the Sheboygan Senior Community about what happened?
Well, at this time when it happened, I was being subjected to a lot of things. There, I no longer wanted to say anything. Actually, at this point in time, I was definitely looking for something different.
So when you say looking for something different, are you meaning looking for a job outside of Sheboygan Senior Community?
Yes, ma'am. But I wanted to leave right
Okay.
because I came to HR one time about an incident with her, and that's when she discussed with me about her felony and with the child. So I felt sorry for her. So when HR asked me, I said, no, not a meeting right now. I tried to
Okay.
work with her.
I was only hearing part of what you said, so I'm going to have to ask you to repeat a little bit there. I heard you say that you went to HR, but I didn't hear what you went to HR about. I'm sorry.
At this time, I went to Mr. Brent, who was over HR, and I talked to him about some of the situations that I was going through there. I left a message. I called on my shift. When he talked to me, I told him, no, that's okay. I'm going to try to work it out with Kathy because at that time, I guess she figured she went too far. And that's when she disclosed to me her felony that she had with endangering a child with prescription narcotics. That then I knew I was going to start looking. So I felt sorry for her and tried to work with her, but it just continued to increase.
Okay. Do you recall when you initially went to, I think you said his name was Mr. Brandt? Was that the correct name?
Brent. Brent.
Grant. Okay.
He was Brent. hmm
Can you spell it? Do you know how to spell his last name?
It's B. It's B. I don't remember his last name. But his name was Mr. Brent, and at that time he was over HR. I
Okay.
don't know who's over HR now.
Okay.
So
And do
I
you
don't know.
recall when you went to him at all about your concerns initially?
I don't remember the date. I don't remember that. It's like almost 5 years ago. Yeah.
Understandable. When you went to him, what you said you talked to him about the situations you were going through. Can you briefly tell me what that was that you shared with him about what you were going through?
Yes, I was discussing with him how heavy the workload is on me. I understand that working in healthcare and find that if we're short, we go help out another unit. But at this time, I had worked all 3 units in one shift. And I was totally exhausted. And the more I tried to explain, the more she kept going on and on. Get the lights, get this, get that. And then when you're in rehab, you have to be very careful with moving them, transferring them. So it was like a heavy workload, and you're not helping me. But I got through the shift.
Was there anything else you disclosed to him about what you were going through other than working a heavy workload?
Yes,
What was that?
yes, I did. I talked to him about how we had another CNA that would come in at like 4:30, 4:45, scheduled to work at 5, would literally sit there at the nurse's station with Kathy, have her breakfast, do talking, all the way up to like 5:45 to 6 o'clock on the clock, and then run me around to get all of these people up at one time, and no one is helping me with the lights. And sometimes when I under a lot of stress, I will sing, but not loud, because it helps me motivate me. So I will sing, some Christian songs, and they will make little rebuttals about it. I kept on doing my job. I talked to him about that.
Okay.
I wish that he was um, one of the witnesses here today. I came to him one more time, and he said, just try to make it through. Just do your best and try to make it through.
So how many times do you think you went to him then?
Oh, it had to be at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I know I left one recording. My first time, I left one recording. And then after that, that's when she disclosed.
I'm sorry, I lost you again for a little bit there. I didn't hear what you were saying. I heard you say you went to him 4 or 5 times, and then after that, I couldn't hear you again. And I think I lost your video now. I don't know if that's just on my end. Attorney Hastings, are you seeing her on your end?
I'm not.
Okay, let me try this again. It looks like she might be back here. Can you hear me, Miss Dent? I'm not seeing you yet, and I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. All right. Can you hear me, Miss Dent?
Yeah, I kind of got kicked out. And so, yes, ma'am,
Yeah.
I hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I can see you. And the last thing I heard you say
Okay.
was that you had told me that you had gone to Mr. Brent about 4 or 5 times, and then you said you started to tell me about how
Yes.
you left a recording, and that's when I lost you. So if you want to maybe start over from there, when you said you left a
Yeah.
recording,
I went to Mr. Yes, ma'am. I went to Mr. Brent about 4 or 5 times. The first time I went to him, I did leave a recording. That's when Miss Kathy shared her personal business with me. I felt sorry for her and I tried to work things out,
okay,
but
and
it
then
didn't help. Right.
go
It
ahead.
kept going on. So I'm so sorry. Yes, ma'am.
No, go ahead. Continue.
So it kept going on. And so I went to Mr. Brent several times after that. So a
And
total of
when
maybe
you,
4 or 5 times I went to him.
okay, and when you went to him, is this something that you're communicating over the phone, or are you like physically meeting with him in his office?
I communicated with him over the phone. And then I had the opportunity to go to his office one time.
When did you go to his office?
Let's see, if I left, I had to go to his office. It had to be right around the holidays. So right around Christmas, right before Christmas, I went and I did go to his office. I had a chance to talk to Mr. Brand.
And this would have been Christmas of 2016, right? Because you filed your complaint in
Yeah,
2017.
it was. Yes, it was right around the holidays, and after our my conversation with him, I said, okay, I'm going to try it again. And that's when I was doing, at that time, I was doing volunteer work at a food pantry, and they would give us a whole bunch of stuff free after we feed the homeless. And I would bring all kinds of stuff to work: potatoes, fruit, candy, everything to try to make peace and let them show that I am a team. I'm a part of their team.
Sure. When you went to him and actually went into his office, what did you talk about with him at that point?
I talked about the point that I feel discriminating against, since on the night shift I was the only black African American working on that shift, and I feel like the workload was a little heavier on me. Um, I told him I didn't like the fact to watch other workers sit down while I'm running around. He told me to be patient and hang in there and just try to work with them. I have a lot of respect. I had a lot of respect for Mr. Brent, and I still do. So I did that, but it didn't work out that way.
All right. Um, you had mentioned that you were the only Black African American CNA on the night shift. Um,
Hmm.
were there any of the nurses that were also Black African Americans? Okay.
No, ma'am. And every blue moon, there will be another black African American that worked a different shift, and that's because the shifts were so short. But other than that, it was just me.
All right. Just see here. We talked a little bit about some of the discrimination you faced with regards to sexual harassment, and then we kind of went into the complaints and things like that that you made. What about religious harassment? Because you had mentioned that you were singing sometimes quietly Christian songs, and I believe, if I understood your testimony correctly, it was that Kathy and maybe some of the other nurses or CNAs would comment when you did that. Is that correct? Did I understand you correctly?
Oh, yes.
Was there
And they would
anything?
joke.
Go ahead.
They
Go
would
ahead.
they would jokingly make comments. Here's the godly CNA, or here she goes on her godly kick, and I would just continue to do my job because, to be honest with you, I was not going to put myself or my license in jeopardy uh, by saying the wrong thing to them. I wasn't going to do that. I have 7 grandkids to raise. That is something I would not do.
Was there anything else that happened that you feel was religious harassment or religious discrimination?
Basically, no, just about them joking around. If I would pray or on my break, if I'm in the break room and I'm reading my Bible or something, and the little comments that they will make about that.
What kind
There
of
she goes
comments would they
again.
make?
Well, there she goes again, reading all the holier than thou. And I basically, at this time, I just stayed quiet because I knew better.
All right. What about any kind of, and maybe these three might go together, but like discrimination or harassment because of your race, color, national origin? Is there any examples you can provide me about ways you feel that you were discriminated or harassed because of your race, color, or national origin?
Oh yeah, definitely. Basically, just the workload alone. Just the work. I mean, I was the only one basically working on the third shift, and to have that workload, I don't think you can fully understand my position in that area. I'm running around catching all of these call lights while they're sitting at the nurse's station eating. And then I have to be responsible for each resident that I go to take care of, and their supplies and their transfer. And then to sit back and watch them work as a team when I work alone. The only time they will walk with me is when they decide to get up a little bit after 6, when I have worked all night, so we can get more patients up for the day shift.
Any other examples you can provide me of discrimination or harassment because of your race, color, or national origin?
No, I feel that the workload and the work schedule is sufficient enough for me. Um, yeah.
What do you mean by the work schedule? I understand what you mean by the workload about how you had
Yeah,
to do a lot, but what do you mean by work schedule?
because I felt if I'm scheduled to work rehab, then work rehab. I understand that the shifts be short, and I am supposed to go to the other units and help out. I don't have a problem, but to literally work me 3 units on one shift, me, that's a lot. When the other ones don't do that. Yes, they will go to the other units and help out and work. But when it came down to my shift, I was at one end of the building to the next. And then I had to explain everything that's going on with all of these residents.
We talked a little bit about the complaints that you made to Mr. Brent. Was there anybody else you complained about who worked at Sheboygan Senior Community about how you were being treated?
Mr. Brent told me to tell who is that, the nursing supervisor or the head nurse. He told me to talk to her. But at this point, as working with the company, I didn't feel comfortable talking to the people there anymore. I wanted to be honest with you, I wanted to exit very nicely and benign. and try to give as much respect as possible. I was not going to mess my license up for that. I would just have to go look for something else. But it continually it grew, and when she did that with her exposing her buttocks and that tattoo, that was pretty much enough for me. Um, thank God that I've been in healthcare for a long time, and I knew better. If nothing else happens today, I stood up for myself and let somebody know what happened, and that's what happened. Whatever I wrote, that's what happened.
I just want to make sure, I'm just reading over your complaint and there's just one other thing that you wrote, and I just want to make sure we cover it. You said, um, though I asked my supervisor to stop, she continually requested that I show her how to roll her head and neck like the black girls
Hmm.
do all the time. I guess
Yeah,
first of all, when was the first time? And I'm assuming when we say your supervisor again, that's Kathy W.
that's
Correct?
Kathy. Yeah,
When was
yeah.
the first time that you can think of that she made that comment or asked you to do that?
It was sometime a little bit after Halloween. I was going around rehab putting supplies because we put supplies in at night. So I was going around rehab putting supplies. She was talking to other coworker. They were all at the nurses station, and then she was like, "Hey, Fannie Mae, can you roll your neck and do your hair like the black
Okay.
people do?" And I was like, you know. So that's when that happened.
And did it happen more than one time? Because you said she continually requested you show her this.
Yeah, yeah, she'll request that I showed her that. That happened several times after that. At this point, I kind of pretty much ignored them and continue to go um, and deal with the residents because what the bottom line is, we in healthcare, we got to take care of the residents as much
Any,
as we can. Hmm.
go ahead.
As much as we can and the best that we can. Got to do our best to take care of them.
Is there
And I
any
was not.
other, go ahead. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you
No,
off. Go ahead.
no, you're breaking off. No, go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Um, I was just going to ask if there's any other examples of discrimination or harassment that you wanted to describe or explain to me.
When I read in the notes um that Kathy was with another coworker, and I was coming out of a room, and I told them that I said for the resident to call me Bahama Mama. That's not true. The resident, I was transferring the resident, very difficult resident with pain. She was talking to me about her trip that she took to Bahama Mama, and she said that she was drinking virgin Bahama Mamas. So I said, okay, did that make you comfortable? And she said, yes. I said, well, think about your good time in Bahamas that you had as I transfer you to and from the bed. So I don't know where that came from, but that's not true.
Anything else about discrimination or harassment that you want to tell me?
No.
Okay, then the last thing I want to get into is just how your employment ended, because you kind of suggested that you were looking to kind of leave and you were looking for the best way to do that. So how did your employment at Sheboygan Community or Sheboygan Senior Community end?
Oh, it ended as this. I got a call. Um, well, one night it was just so horrific. I couldn't handle it anymore. I walked. I don't know if that was the secretary at the front desk. I'm crying, literally crying in tears, and asked, "Can I please go home?" And I said, "If you let me go home and I can get this for me, I promise I'll come back to my next shift and try to work things out. And the lady, I don't know if she was the secretary early in the morning, but it was at the front desk. And she said, I don't have permission to do that. And so I said, okay. So I went in the bathroom, I washed my face, I went back to that unit, I finished that shift. And I went home. Um, Next thing you know, I got a call for me to stay home for a couple of days, and they'll call me about a meeting. So that's what I did. I came in to a meeting, and it was Mr. Paul was there and Mr. Brent was there. There was another lady there that I didn't know who she was. She didn't even stay a good 7, 10 minutes in the meeting. So yes, I came in the meeting with a notebook and a piece of paper because I want to write down, you know, um, what's going on. You know, they were talking to me. They were suggesting for me to do a day shift. I could not do a day shift because I have my grandkids doing the day partial of the day. Um, they were making suggestions for me that did not fit for me. I started to feel uncomfortable, and then I said, "Well, I have no one here to represent me, and it's best for me to walk away. I don't want to say anything." And so that's when he said, Mr. Paul said, okay, this meeting is over. Or I said, okay. And then I left because I know better with my license. If you're going to leave a place, it is good to give a 2 weeks notice. Unfortunately, with this situation, I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And that's when I said, I need to let somebody know what's going on.
So during that meeting with Mr. Paul and Mr. Brett, did they terminate you, or was it just that the meeting was over and you left?
They did not terminate me verbally. The meeting was over, and we were dismissed. And I said, "Okay, I have
Did you
nobody here." Hmm.
go ahead, finish up. I'm sorry.
I had nobody there to uh, represent me, and I was a little disappointed with the company, and I was disappointed in how they handled it, and I was kind of skeptical of even wanting to be there because in healthcare you can't work with a felony. So now I have my supervisor nursing telling me she has a felony for this, and now I'm sitting in a meeting and he's talking all over me and not really listening to me, And I was like, this is not professional. I mean, I'm already wounded, and you're making me feel a little bit more uncomfortable, and you are the department heads. So I had a little bit more faith, and then how they were gonna handle it. It was more like what I did,
Were
what I
you
did wrong. Hmm.
were you ever put back on the schedule at all? Because you said you were told to stay home for a few days before we had a meeting. After that meeting, were
No,
you ever put back on the schedule? No? Okay.
mm-mm. I was never put back on the schedule. They never called me. They didn't contact me, and that's when I said this is a little bit too much. I wrote for help, and I went to one of the labor places and started working. Yeah.
Um, you again, oh, we've gone through kind of like the reasons why you felt you were discriminated against: your race, your color, your religion, your national origin. You had a retaliation claim as well. Do you think any of those things were the reason why your employment ended the way it did?
Pretty much. I pretty much think that um, they were pretty much shocked of me letting them know these things, but I feel that I have rights too, and if I'm respecting you and doing my job, I expect for you to respect me and do mine and do yours. I mean, the common ground is healthcare.
Is there
And I'm
anything
not
else,
go
Miss
into
Dent?
a shouting match. I didn't. I didn't hear you. Yes, there's one thing I wanted to say. I thank God for the opportunity to be today. Um, if you look at my complaint, and I'm going to conclude with this. If you look at my complaint and they say, well, what's the amount that you think you deserve? And I said, whatever God says. If nothing else happens, I stood up for myself and I let somebody and people know that this happened to me. So very grateful.
Anything else that you want
Hello.
to talk about before I turn it over to Attorney Hastings to ask you any questions?
Yes. And also, healthcare means a lot to me. I've been in healthcare for over 30 years. Um, I have training and other things that I can do. Since then, me working at Sheboygan Senior Community, I have won numerous awards for healthcare. And looking back over these 77 pages and seeing what people said about me is amazing. Seeing that I won the second highest award at the hospital anybody can win, and I still was the only Black. So I have achieved a lot since then, but I have rights and I stood up for them. So whatever the conclusion is, I just I believe in God, and I once again I thank God for the opportunity just to be here. I'm raising 7 grandkids, and we have a right to stand up when something's not right with us, and people are not treating us right. And I want to thank you again.
Sure. Um,
Mhm.
Anything else? I just want to make sure that I get all your testimony, Ms. Dent, before I
Yeah.
give Attorney Hastings the opportunity to ask you questions.
And yes, one more thing. I'm glad that my experience at Sheboygan Senior Community did not defer me from working in the healthcare field, because I have changed a lot of people's lives and a lot of families' lives, because I do have the heart for what I do. I forgive everyone there, but I have to stand up for what's right. And I thank you again.
Sure. I just have one question. I don't think I asked you this, or if I did, I apologize, but what day did that meeting occur with you and Mr. Paul and Mr. Brett? Do you remember the day that that happened?
I I know it was. I think it was sometime in. I don't know. It was really cold out, so I don't know if it was like the end of January, beginning of March. But I remember because I was like an hour. I remember it was cold out, and I was there an hour and a half early, just sitting in the car. But I don't remember the date. But we were there.
All right. Attorney Hastings, do you have any questions for Ms. Dent?
Okay.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
I can. Can
Yes,
you hear her,
sir.
Ms. Dent? Okay.
Yes, yes, ma'am, and
Okay.
yes, sir.
I'm gonna have you take a look at Exhibit R3.
Okay, just one second. I can bring it up here.
Mm-hmm.
I can make it a little bit larger. Let me know, Ms. Dent, if you can see that.
If you minimize that
Mm-mm.
side
I
menu, it gets bigger.
I can't see it. Sorry.
Video's out.
Oh, that's right. You said you're having trouble seeing us, correct, Ms. Dent?
Yeah, because you're frozen right now. He's off the camera, and I'm frozen again. So we can just still discuss it and keep moving. I'm
Do
okay
you
with that.
have, do you have the hard copies of the documents
Whatever
or
you want,
the,
sir.
well, if he wants to show you a document, do you have the documents in front of you, like on your own
No, I don't even.
screen?
Okay, it says. Okay, is that application?
Can you see something now, Miss Dent?
Oh, hello. It says
Yep,
view your
I
application.
can
Do you
hear
want me to
you.
hit that?
Try that once. I'm not
I
sure why
said,
that's coming up.
I'm trying to. It said it didn't come up yet. It says viewing Mrs. Brown's application. Is that
Yeah, hit
you?
that. Yeah, I think so. Maybe hit yes to that and see what happens.
It's not even letting me do anything on there. It's not letting me say yes. It just has the margarine, but we can continue to move forward.
But if he wants
And
to
he
show
can
you
still talk about
documents, I don't, but if he wants you to read something on a document, I
sure.
need you to be able to see it. And so if you can't see it, I don't know how we're going to be able to continue. Is there any way, Ms.
Uh-oh.
Dent, that you can bring up the documents that he sent to you another way without me showing them to you? Do you have them either printed out or like an email or
No,
something that you can look at?
I have an email. So let me go into my email on my phone. And would that help?
Yeah.
And
If you,
I
well,
go
I
down to
know,
his document.
right, I was gonna say that might be the best way of doing this, is that if you can bring
Okay.
up those documents that he sent a few, last week, I think it was. I think we lost her again. All right.
I know.
I had paused the
Hello.
recording, so I'm restarting the recording. So now, Miss Dent, I'm going to try showing the documents again. Can you see me now at least?
Okay, you blinked out a little bit, and so did Mr. Hastings, but
Okay,
you're buffing, so let's
let me
try
see.
this.
Yeah, let me see what happens. I'm showing the document
Yeah.
again, and let me know if you can see it on your screen. This is Respondents Exhibit 3.
No, I don't see it, and it won't let me touch you. Trying to get to it, and it won't let me bring it down. So I don't know. Oh, yay! Got it.
You got it? Okay, good.
Woo.
All
Okay,
right.
I can
All
breathe
right.
again.
All right. Let us know if at any point it goes out again when we're trying to show you a document. I think I lost you again. Can you still see it?
Not me. Yeah, but I see where it says Sheboygan Community. I'm trying to bring it down.
You mean like move it
Yeah,
down like this? Okay.
yeah, you can move it. Yeah, it's kind of blurry, but we're good.
Okay.
Okay,
Let
the
me,
document. Okay,
all
keep
right. I can
keep
make it a
going
little bit
to the one
bigger
that
and
he
see if
wants.
that helps. This should be the document that he wants. Attorney
A little bit.
Hastings, I believe this is R3.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Attorney Hastings, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and begin.
I just note that her video feed is down, so we can't see her.
You can't
And
see
now the
me?
signal's back. Nope, and the signal's back up the orange triangle. I don't know what that even means, but it seems to pop up whenever signal's lost from her video.
Yeah,
I
we're
can
buffing.
I can see
I
her
see
now.
you.
I can't.
I can see you.
Oh,
Okay.
in any case. So Exhibit R3, can you see it?
Yeah, it's a little blurry, sir, but let's go forward. Thank
You
you.
recognize the document?
Yeah, congratulations. Yes, sir.
Okay, is that the
Is that
letter?
the one you're talking about?
Yes. Is that your letter of employment?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously at the top there, it's dated September 27 of 2016, correct?
Uh-huh.
And the second full paragraph indicates that your orientation was scheduled for September 30. Is that right?
Yes.
And then a little bit beneath that, the third bullet point states that enclosed forms with highlighted items should be completed and brought with you to your orientation. Is that right?
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Is that okay?
And you testified that you were hired to work as a CNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were working third shift. Is that also referred to as the NOC shift, NOC?
The night, yeah. NOC is knock.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's the same thing as saying third shift in nurse language?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And you did state that you worked a consistent set of hours, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Is that right?
Yeah.
In terms of what days each week that you worked, was that a set schedule or did it change on a weekly basis?
The schedule will change periodically.
So you didn't.
The
What
schedule.
I'm getting at is it wasn't that every week you worked Monday through Wednesday every single week. Some weeks you'd work Monday through Wednesday, others you'd work, I don't know, Tuesday and Thursday, for example.
Yeah, because you have to do your weekends.
Okay, so it
You
wasn't
have to
as
work
though,
weekends.
Okay, and I'm gonna have you then take a look at Exhibit R4.
Okay, just one second. This is Exhibit R4. If you need me, I can bring it down to a specific part of the document, Attorney Hastings.
Okay, you're on page 16, so that's where I want to start.
Okay,
First of all, I'm gonna have you just scroll down to the bottom. Okay, that's good. First off, do you recognize this document, Ms. Dent?
Yes, sir.
And looking at the bottom of page 16, is that your signature on the bottom?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like there's some highlighting, and it's dated 9/29 of 16. Was this one of the forms that you were instructed to sign and bring with you to the orientation?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll have you please scroll up to paragraph 5, which would be the reporting violations heading.
okay. Can you see that, Ms. Dent? I'm kind of putting the cursor.
Yeah, I can see it a little bit. It's a little small and blurry.
Let me make it a little
Mhm.
bit bigger for you, see if that makes a difference. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that helps a little bit, and thank you.
Okay, the first sentence indicates that the policy addresses the organization's open door policy. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I can see that.
And then in the third sentence, it beginning with the word however, it reads, quote,
Mhm.
however, if you are not comfortable speaking with your supervisor or you are not satisfied with your supervisor, a little bit cut off there. I'll pull up mine.
I think it goes supervisor's response.
Oh, you can
Yes,
speak to the director of human resources.
right. Or anyone in management
Mhm.
whom you feel comfortable approaching. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then just above your signature at the bottom, it states, my signature below indicates my receipt and understanding of this policy. I also verify that I've been provided with an opportunity to ask questions about the policy. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Moving on to then page 17.
Okay. I'm just scrolling really fast. Did you want me to go to the bottom first or stay on the top, Attorney Hastings?
I suppose we can start at the bottom, I guess, that would probably be easiest.
Okay.
Same questions as before. Is that your signature on it?
Yes, yes, sir.
And like the prior document, there is some blue highlighting and it's dated September 29 of 16. So is this another one of the forms that you were told to
Mhm.
fill out and bring with you to orientation?
Yes.
Okay. And then near the top of the document, I guess all the way up scrolling would be, there it is. Obviously at the top it says harassment policy, right?
Mhm.
And that first paragraph there, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but summarizes Sheboygan Senior Community's commitment to a workplace free of discrimination and harassment, based on a litany of characteristics, including race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
That same paragraph makes clear that no employee of this organization is exempt from this policy. Is that right?
Yes.
And scrolling down under the heading reporting complaints, that paragraph essentially instructs employees to bring their complaints of any perceived harassment or discrimination to the attention of their direct supervisor or to the Human Resources Department, who will then investigate the allegations. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, sir.
And then, again, at the bottom of that, there is, under the heading no retaliation, there's also a statement that under no circumstances will an employee who brings a complaint of harassment be subjected to any retaliation by Sheboygan Senior Community. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, sir.
And then just above your handwritten name at the bottom states that if an employee has questions about this policy, they should contact their supervisor or the Human Resources Department. The success of our policy depends in significant part upon the understanding and cooperation of all of our employees. And then, well, first of all, did I read that right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Basically, the paragraph that's above your handwritten name, do you see that? That section essentially tells you to direct any questions about the policy to either your supervisor or to HR. Is that right?
Yes.
And then after your handwritten name, it indicates that you've read the policy, understand the policy, and acknowledges that it applies to you as an employee of Sheboygan Senior Community, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Now, page 18. And, oh, yeah, I guess you could stop there. Now, this one is clearly dated September 30 of 2016, right?
Yep.
And is that your signature there?
Yes, sir.
And there's no highlighting on it, right?
No.
So this is not a document that you brought with you to orientation, right?
No, sir.
And it was signed on September 30 of 16. So is it fair to say that you signed this during your scheduled orientation?
Oh, yes, sir.
And in the first paragraph of that document, what looks to me like bold text, but it's the second sentence, it states, quote, I further understand it is my responsibility to read and understand the material referencing the employee handbook. And if I have questions, to contact Human Resources or my supervisor for clarification. Is that fair?
That's fair to say.
And finally, page 19.
Okay.
And this document's labeled an acknowledgement form. It looks to be a more general statement that you've been provided with a number of things. But first of all, that's your signature at the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Like the previous document, it's dated September 30th of 16, and there's no highlights. So is it fair to say that this was something you signed during orientation?
Yes, sir.
And it lists a number of policies, including harassment policies and whistleblower policy. Is that right?
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, the last paragraph, it also looks like it's in bold typeface. States, quote, "I understand it is my responsibility to read and understand these policies, and if I have questions pertaining to the policy, to contact human resources or my supervisor for clarification." Is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So between these four acknowledgements, each one of them in similar language basically says you're acknowledging that you were given the policies, you understand the policies, and that if you have questions or want clarification, you should contact either your supervisor or human resources department. Fair?
Correct.
And
Hello?
hello?
Yes,
Yep, we
sir.
can hear you.
Okay.
Um, so go back then to exhibit R1, page 1.
Okay, just one second. Okay, I know this one is pretty blurry, so I don't know, Miss Dent, can you see it?
The one with the welcome letter.
Yeah, begins with
What's
welcome.
what paragraph are we reflecting to?
I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you. What I will just
Okay.
ask
Mhm.
is, does this document, does it look familiar to you?
That's your welcome letter.
Was that,
Okay.
is that the first page of the employee handbook?
Is it?
I'm asking you that question.
I guess so. I don't have my papers in front of me, so I'll come to agreement with you.
Well, take a look at the bottom sentence of what's on the screen right now.
The
Oh,
bottom
no,
sentence.
now it's the third from the bottom, beginning with this handbook.
Oh, you got to go down a little bit.
Can you see where I've got kind of the cursor right in here?
It says you are, after all, the face and your cursive is. I don't see your cursive. And which one you want me to see? This handbook is not a contract
Right.
and it's
It
not attended.
indicates
Is that what you want me to be at, sir? Okay.
right, these, and about, you see the paragraph beginning with "we have prepared"?
We have prepared.
Yes.
Okay.
And that makes reference to this employee handbook. So
Okay.
does this trigger anything in your memory?
Not really, but if it's in an employee handbook and I signed it, then I received it.
Okay, you have no reason to believe that this is anything other than the handbook that you received?
This is the handbook.
Okay. Now, and I won't go through all the policies of the handbook with you, but I will have you take a look at exhibit R5.
Okay, just one second. Let me pull that one up.
Okay.
And it's page 20.
Can you see that, Miss Dent?
Yes.
And it appears to be a request to use PTO dated
Oh yeah,
November
to go on a retreat.
24. Oops. Right, and is that your signature on the bottom?
Yes, sir.
And it is dated November 24 of 16, right?
Yes.
And it's addressed to Tina. So I gather Tina handles the scheduling.
Yeah, Tina is the scheduler. We're the scheduler. Mm-hmm.
And in this document, you are requesting to use PTO on January 18 and 19 of 2017 and April 14 through 16 of 2017. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, previously testified that at around this time, you wanted to leave and wanted to look for other jobs. Is that right?
Yes.
So if you were looking to leave, why submit PTO requests for so far out into the future?
Well, what's so far out, sir, is because I was doing a lot of ministry work, and I had appointments on them days with my twin grandsons with autism. I respected them enough to give them an ample enough time in case I was still there, which I was going to still be there because I know what my license say. So even if I was looking for something else, I was still going to stay and at least try to hang in there at least 6 months to cover my license and to try to work things out. Another thing I want to address to you, sir, is that in the statements earlier and your pages 16, 17, and 18, it says if I had any complaints, go to the supervisor or HR, the open door policy. But you forgot to, I want to alliterate and let you know, it says you can go to higher if you felt comfortable. If I'm having an issue with the supervisor, I went to HR several times. I did not feel comfortable going to anyone else. So these days right here were already previously done in my life. So I gave them an ample enough time for replacement. I thought that would be respectful.
So you made these requests for 6 months into the future. Was that your anticipation that you would still be working for SSC on those dates?
Yes, because I had still had hope that we can try to work things out, thinking things have changed. If you notice that these dates are around the holiday times, and that's after my last talk with Mr. Brent, I started bringing stuff that I volunteered in ministry for at the food pantry. I started bringing gifts and helping more. If you notice the time frames.
What time frames are you referring to?
I'm talking about that I asked for January 2017, 18th and 19th off. So that means that I'm making a decision to stay, try to work it out. That means that after the holidays that I stated earlier, I tried to work things out around the holidays, bringing extra stuff there to show teamwork, far as when I was working in the food pantry. So I'm thinking about staying there, hoping that things will work out. And that's why you see April. If you notice April of that year, that is Good Friday and Easter. I go on a retreat at that time. That's why the days are like that. So I still had hope of resurrection with my relationship with Sheboygan Senior Community.
And that's as
And
of
if you
November
notice,
24 of 16, right?
I'm sorry.
And that's
And if
as
you
of
see the
November
day,
24.
right, it's right before the holidays. It's right before the holidays. So that means, once again, sir, I was still trying to work as a team, show appreciation, and still was bringing stuff there um, that I would get from the food pantry that I did ministry work in. So the dates line up. That's right before Thanksgiving, sir.
I don't know what you were referring to in terms of the dates lining up. Can you explain that?
It's lining up to what I'm saying about, even though I had prior things of thinking about looking for something else, I still had the willingness to work things out with the company. I still had the
I believe,
willingness to stay, even if I had to go casual. That's what I'm
I
saying,
believe your,
sir.
your, I believe that your testimony was
Um,
that
I
you
can't
had,
hear you. Sorry.
I believe that you testified that
I'm
you
sorry
had
again, sir.
basically, can you hear me now?
I, no,
Can you hear
you
me
are
now?
breaking up. I'm still breaking up a little bit, but it's going to be okay.
I, I want to make sure you're hearing everything I'm saying, so can you hear everything I'm saying now?
I, I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Um, in terms of scheduling, how far out were schedules made?
We get scheduled monthly there. So our schedule at that time we will get scheduled monthly. So
So,
if I'm sorry.
so basically, sometime near the beginning of any given month, you'd receive your schedule for that month. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. And is that one of the reasons why you submitted this request so far out in advance?
Yes, and also, sir, Sheboygan Senior Community had a hard time keeping staff, so it was basically a lot of agency working there, and I wanted to put my request in early.
And you referenced uh, some conversations. I think you might have said you left messages for uh, Mr. Frederick, Brent Frederick. Uh, is it possible that you left those for Paul Treffert?
I think I might have lost her again. I don't know. Do you see her, Attorney Hastings, on your screen?
I haven't seen her this entire time.
Okay. I was seeing her up until just now. I think she might be out here. Let me stop sharing this for a second, see if I can bring her in. Can you hear me, Miss Dent? Great. Can you hear me, Miss Dent?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I keep getting kicked out, so I have everything right here so I can keep going back in at you. I'm sorry, Mr. Hastings.
It looks still like there's a fourth, oh, gone again.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna try to see if I can take this. The problem is on my end, I don't know which one I'm gonna be. I think this is the one. If I remove this one, it should send. Yeah, we didn't lose you. Okay, that's what I wanted to
Okay.
make sure that I wasn't losing you and keeping the wrong one. But I think we've got you now. Let me go back to sharing a document because Attorney Hastings, were you going to ask her about another document at this point?
I was soon thereafter. but-
Okay. I'll bring it back up then. And then you had started to ask her a question, though, I believe, about Brett Frederick. And then you, I think, said Attorney Hastings could it be Paul Trufford? Is that where we were at?
Yeah,
All right. So if you want to re-ask your question, go ahead.
sure. I believe there was testimony about a couple of phone messages being left for
Mhm.
for Mr. Frederick. I think that was the testimony. Is that right or not?
Oh, yes.
Uh, could those messages have been instead left for Mr. Treffert?
I was leaving a message for Mr. Brent. In the 77 pages, I see that you have some copies of maybe a couple of the messages where I said that's okay. I was going to work it out with Kathy W. and let's see what goes from there. Or so that's in the 77 pages, sir.
Right, it is.
At least one
And
of the conversation.
if you want to look at Exhibit R6,
Mm-hmm.
it says, "Hi, Mr. Paul."
Okay, then it was the administrator, Mr. Paul.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
But I also called Mr. Brent too, because one of the coworkers told me just don't call human resources, call Mr. Paul.
And I'm going to
And
have
her
you look
name
at,
is Taylor. Huh?
I'm going to have you
Yes,
look.
I'm sorry, that's a message for Mr. Paul. Yes, you could keep going.
Okay. I'm going to have you look at Exhibit R8.
Let me just
Okay,
bring that up just 1 second.
sure.
Can
Now,
you see
not,
that?
Can you just make it a little wider and then we're good.
A
Okay.
little.
That's the assignment from Hickory. That's an
okay,
assignment for one of the units there.
okay,
I
so
seen that in the 77 pages.
and the only question I'm asking you about this is if you scroll down to the bottom of the page,
Mm-hmm.
there's some handwriting there and some initials. The initials are kind of cut off, but is that your handwriting and initials?
Oh, yes, sir. And I'm glad
Okay.
that paper is there. Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom of the next page, it's the same thing.
Yes, sir.
That's you.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom of the third page there, 26,
Mm-hmm.
same thing.
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned having a meeting. I don't know that you could remember the precise date, but you recalled a meeting with Mr. Treffert and Mr. Brent Frederick. Is that right?
Oh, yes, because that's the date, sir, where I worked all 3 units. And when you see, there is no get-ups on this unit. When you're the
Hang on,
only CNA.
there's no question on the table yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
Do you recall whether that meeting occurred on December 8th of 16?
No, I don't recall that. Was it?
That I wasn't there, so I can't say for certain.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I don't recall that.
but then I'll have you look at
Mhm.
R10, page 32.
I'm sorry?
Okay, this, can you see
Yeah.
this, Ms. Dent? This should be R10.
Okay, and this document says at the top that it's about a meeting with Fannie Mae Dent, with Paul Treffert, and Brent
I'm
Frederick.
still, I don't have that up here. I'm still have the papers that I signed with their, get up on that unit.
Okay, it should be on your screen now because I did scroll down. Can you see it yet?
I just see where, there we go.
Okay, can you hear me still?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so at the top of that document, it says that a meeting between you, Mr. Treffert, and Brent Frederick on December 8th of 2016. Does that refresh your memory at all, or is that are you still kind of fuzzy on the exact date?
And that's in December?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that when we were in the meeting room?
I don't know.
I think that's his
Okay.
question to you. Do you believe that that's when you had that meeting was on December 8th of 2016?
I don't remember December 18th meeting with Paul and Mr. Brent. I remember in Mr. Brent's room down in HR. I remember one meeting with both of them, and that was after
After what?
the holidays.
After the holidays?
Because if it's in December, it has to be after Christmas. I remember going to Mr. Brent's office on the first floor in the back. I don't remember Mr. Paul being in there.
Okay, now I'll have you take a look at Exhibit R11.
Okay.
Does this form look familiar to you?
Can you see it, Ms. Dent?
Yeah, my
I think we
employee
lost her
date.
again.
And then I put it in on 12/6/20. Mm-hmm.
So can you see the document now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Well, I
and
did it earlier. It was cold out there. So if it's there, then that's what it is.
I didn't ask you a question quite yet, but I will now. Third line from the bottom of page 33. There's a line that says date quit / discharged. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
And looks like you wrote December 6th of 2016. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
So that would indicate that you were not, your complaint would be alleging that you were no longer employed as of December 6th of 16, right?
Right.
So there would be any meetings that you would have had would have occurred well before Christmas. Is that fair?
You're right.
Okay.
Sorry about that. You're correct.
All right. So then, in this document, if you could please scroll down. All the way to
Mm-hmm.
the bottom of 36. There it is. And that's your signature?
Yes, sir.
And it's dated December 13 of 16, right?
Is it?
Can you see it?
No, can you bring it up?
Do you see where your signature is?
I'm still on Joyce. I'm on A and B. Yeah, December 13th.
All right. And that is your signature there?
Yes.
Now, going back to, or not going back, but scrolling down to number 13.
Okay, just
Mhm.
1 second. Let me get there. Let me know, Ms. Dent, when you see it, because I think there's a little bit of a delay on your end. So let me know when you can see a new document, which is Respondents Exhibit
Right.
13.
And if you
Okay,
can,
I think one is it. Okay.
you can go to the next page. It's the charge of discrimination. We've referenced it before, but the document wasn't brought up. So this is your complaint filed with the EEOC, is that right?
Yes.
And in the box that states dates discrimination took place, I would say that's on the right-hand side, next to those series of boxes,
Mm-hmm.
the one to the right of that, do you see it?
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And it states the range of dates during which discrimination took place as being October 1 of 16 to December 6 of 16. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's it. It's the same as it says in the document that we just looked at a moment ago, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yes. I'm with you.
Okay. And
Yeah, I
scrolling
got it
down to the
now. I'm
bottom,
with you. Mm-hmm.
and then scrolling down to the bottom of this document,
Mm-hmm.
it says, is that your signature there?
Oh, yes, sir.
And looks like the date is January 12 of 17. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you can move it up a little bit more, please. Yeah. A little bit more so I can see January because now I know the 6th and 8th. I got it. Yep. You can keep asking me. Yes, sir.
All right. I'm just trying to establish dates. That's all.
Yeah, I got it now. I know why the 6th and the 8th is there. Yeah.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
then exhibit R22.
Yes.
Okay, again, Ms. Dent, let me know when you can see it.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm still on the January 12th, 2017.
All right.
I guess that's exhibit 13. He wants number 22.
Yep, it's up on my screen, but you have a delay on your end. So just let me know when you finally see it on your screen.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm still on 13. Yeah.
And while we're waiting, I'll just ask ALJ Brown just a question of logistics. If my witness were to try to log in now, would he be in the waiting room?
Yes,
Okay, so he can just sit there and then you can let him in when,
yes.
right? Okay, I'll try contact.
Can you see the document yet, Ms. Dent?
Is the
Okay.
document up?
Okay, you
Is
can
that
see
the
it now?
document? Is it dated July 29th, 2020? Is that it?
That's in the center. The email looks to be dated July 9th of 2020, but there is a date in the center that says July 29th, 2020. So I think we're on the same page now.
Yeah, July 29th, 2020. Okay.
Do you recognize that document?
Oh yeah, can you bring it up a little bit? Is that from Miss Jessica? Who's that from?
It appears to be an email from the Equal Rights Officer or the Equal Rights Division.
Oh, okay.
Okay, do you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is essentially the ERD investigator asking you to provide information you believe supports your complaint and identify any witnesses who can provide evidence on your behalf. And I'm summarizing, but is that sort of the essentially what's being asked?
Okay.
Was that yes? Is that right or no?
Yes. From what I
Okay.
see, yes.
Okay. Do you recall, I mean, you remember getting this email?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then Exhibit R23, and I'm not gonna go through everything that's in there,
Uh-huh.
but I'm just gonna ask if that's what you submitted in response to the email that we just discussed, marked Exhibit R22.
Oh yeah, they had the 150. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is your letter, that's your
Oh,
handwriting.
that's my handwriting. That's me.
Okay. And I will just have you look at Exhibit R24.
Okay, just a second. Let me get down there. Let me know, Ms. Dent, when you can see a new document that is not your handwriting.
Um, nope, that's okay. That's a new document.
So you see the initial
Mm-hmm.
determination on your screen?
It says are we on July 29th, 2020? And this is a document from D. Okay.
So do you
Okay.
recall ever receiving this document?
Can we bring it up a little bit? Of course. Yes.
Okay. And it just states initial determination, no probable cause, and then there's a couple more pages to it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I
I
remember
don't
that.
have, I don't have follow-up questions about that. I just wanted to confirm
Oh, sure.
that document. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Let me just, and that's, those are all the questions I have. I would move to admit, wait, let me see here. Exhibits R3, R4, oh boy, I'm a little out of order, but R1, R5, R8, R11,
Break it, don't go off. Okay.
R13,
Mm-hmm.
R22, R23, and R24.
Do you have any objections, Ms. Dent, to my receiving those
Oh, you know what?
documents that he just referenced and offered?
You know what? At this time, Judge, no. I'm still grateful. No.
Okay. I noticed, Attorney Hastings, that you missed two that I had marked off. One was R6, which I think are the voicemail messages, and then, well, R10 was the meeting notes, and I don't know, were you gonna offer those as well?
Yes, and I'm glad you caught that. So I would have gotten it admitted through Mr. Trefford, but I'll offer them now for admission.
Do you have any objections, Ms. Dent, to all of those exhibits then being offered into evidence?
No.
All right, so then
That's
all
fine
of
with
those
me.
documents, okay, then all of those documents so far received in the record. It sounded like Attorney Hastings, you didn't have any other questions for Ms. Dent. Ms. Dent, before you rest your case, I just want to make sure, is there any additional evidence you want to present?
Oh, no. No, I'm good. I'm grateful. Thank you.
All right, so then Ms. Dent has rested her case. I see Attorney Hastings that Mr. Trefford is waiting in the lobby. Does anybody need to take a break, or can we continue on and start with his testimony?
I don't need a break.
Do you
I'm
need a
good.
break, Ms. Dent? Okay, then I will bring him in
No.
just a second. All right.
Oh.
Mr. Trefford, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I think we're ready for you to testify. I need to swear you in, however, before we begin. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you can put your hand down. Attorney Hastings is going to begin by asking you some questions. When he is done, Ms. Dent may have some questions for you, and I may have some questions as well. I just want to make sure before we continue, it looks like I lost Ms. Dent. Are you still there, Ms. Dent?
No, I'm here.
Okay. All right, then I just wanted to make sure. So Attorney
Mhm.
Hastings, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Mr. Trefford, what is your current position, or what title do you currently hold?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Sheboygan Senior Community, Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
How long have you worked for Sheboygan Senior Community?
First day there was February 1st, 2016, so just over 5 years.
And have you always held the same position there?
My title has changed, but my responsibilities have stayed the same.
Okay, what was your former title?
Executive Director.
And you mentioned that it's the same position with a different name, right?
Yes.
And is your current job your first in senior care communities?
At SSC, yes, it is. I came in as the Executive Director.
And before you worked at SSC, did you work in any other senior communities?
Yes, I've worked in long-term care for over 25 years.
You say 25 years?
Over 25 years, yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit R2.
Just 1 second. I'm going to have to bring that up. Let me just get to that document because we're on a different document on the screen. Can you see R2, Mr. Trefford?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll backtrack just a little bit. Approximately when did your title change from Executive Director to CEO?
I think that was I'd like to say that was done on January 1st of 2019. It was more pro forma. Again, it's more just representative of my responsibilities. As I said, the title, the job itself didn't change, but the board of directors, in consultation with myself and others, suggested that we move it from executive directors to CEO.
Okay, so in looking at Exhibit R2, does that document look familiar to you?
Yes.
Does that reflect the leadership structure at SSC prior to your title change on or about January 1 of 19?
Yes, it does.
And your position as executive director would put you essentially second in command underneath only SSC's board of directors, correct?
Yes, I do report to a board of directors. It's a volunteer, not-for-profit board of directors, so all the operating responsibilities are mine.
So you're at the top of the chain of command as it relates to day-to-day activities at SSC.
Yes, that's true.
You have sole authority to hire, fire, and discipline employees.
I'd say ultimate responsibility for yes.
Okay. Who else has that authority?
Director of nursing currently.
What about back in 2016 or so?
To that, at that time, it was solely my responsibility, my discretion, my authority.
And around, let's say during the calendar year 2016, who was the HR director?
A gentleman named Brent Frederick.
Do you recall when he left SSC?
I don't recall. It was over 2 years ago. Ashley's been there for quite some time now.
And Ashley's the current HR director, correct?
Yes.
What's her last name?
Allard, Allard.
Okay. Do you generally work closely with whoever the HR director is on matters related to the employees?
Yes, very closely.
Does the HR director have any independent authority to make hire-fire decisions?
Generally not. It's again, it's with a consultation. So the responsibility to make the offer letter, for instance, the HR director, but typically those things are done with my awareness and blessing, if you will.
Okay, so you're involved in all personnel decisions as they relate to hiring and firing.
Yes.
And I will have you please pull up Exhibit R1. And I believe this has been admitted as an exhibit as the SSC's employee handbook, at least at all relevant times to this action. So scrolling down to the bottom of this first page, it looks, that's your signature at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
So you are familiar with this document in a general sense, correct?
Yes.
When was the last time that the handbook was revised?
So I'm sorry, the last time it was what?
The handbook was revised.
I would say we revised the policy procedures within our HR overview regularly. In terms of that last time that particular document was printed, it's been quite some time, I believe. But again, certainly through COVID, we've updated our operating procedures regularly. So, but the handbook itself has not been changed for at least a couple of years.
Okay. Would you be able to tell in looking at this whether this was the handbook that was in place back in 2016?
Yes.
Okay. Moving to page 2. And looking at the second paragraph, essentially this paragraph instructs employees to consult with their supervisor or the HR department if they have any questions, and that leadership will listen to their complaints and try to work things out with employees. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. That's the core operating principle of my management style.
So your philosophy involves trying to work out all problems rather than just ignoring them or getting rid of the problem. Is that right?
Absolutely. Anybody that knows anything about long-term care knows that staffing is the key. So we do everything we can to keep our staff happy and there and on board. Absolutely. That is a big part of my day.
Okay. And that would be paragraph 4, right in the middle. It states that employment at SSC is on an at-will basis. Is that right?
Of course.
And that applies to all employees who are there. Is that right?
Yes, at all times.
Okay. And the final paragraph basically states that the executive director, who is you, basically has sole final authority as to all employment decisions. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is.
Moving to page 4. Oh, I'm sorry, page 3. I apologize.
That's okay.
Under the heading of employment relationship, the first paragraph essentially reiterates the at-will nature of the employment. Is that fair?
Yes, it restates the same.
And the second also restates your prior statement that no one except the executive director can make decisions as to employment, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now go to page 4. And under the heading of open door policy, the last 2 paragraphs of that section, that paragraph essentially is meant to encourage employees to report all of their problems with co-employees to their supervisor, or if they're not comfortable with doing that, or if there are problems with the supervisor, they should report that to a member of SSC management. Is that right?
That's correct. I think good management practice would be you want the problem resolved at the level by which it's occurring when it can be. But sometimes for any number of reasons that's not possible, in which case you should go up a level or 2, or ultimately, as we've been saying, to my position if need be.
Right. So following up on the last thing you mentioned there, it's not unheard of for employees to come directly to you with their problems, right?
Sure, absolutely. It does happen. It's not my first choice, but again, better to come to me than go to nobody.
Right.
But again, my preference is you work out with your supervisor, your coworker. But again, a lot of times I can facilitate that, send you back, work it out, kind of be that negotiator if need be. It's important, as I said before, that we have a team that works well together and that they be there. That's everything what we're about.
And then the next section under the header of new employee, and this sentence, this section basically states that the first 90 days on the job is considered the introductory or orientation period. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that similar to what maybe would otherwise be referred to as a probationary period?
Yeah, fairly standard within the industry. If not, I guess maybe just general employment practices. That's not unusual to see the first 90 days be some sort of a review period or orientation period.
And then the bottom of the second paragraph once again reiterates the at-will nature of employment, right?
Yes.
And page 5, please. The bottom of the second paragraph under work schedule states essentially that all employees are expected to be at work on time for all scheduled shifts. Is that fair?
Yes.
And The beginning of the next paragraph requires an employee to personally call to report their absence. Is that right?
Yes, we insist on that. It's imperative that we have that.
And does that paragraph refer to unexpected absences, meaning ones that couldn't have been foreseen, such as a vacation or something like that?
Absolutely. Again, we're not here to get people in trouble, but the assumption today in this day and age is everyone has access to a phone. And it's not about what's happening as much as can we get that shift covered. If you're not able to be here, who can care for our residents that day? The more notice we have to get that covered, the better off we are. When it's last minute or worst case is not at all, then we're really just stuck with the folks we have, and that makes it hard to do the job.
And moving to page 6. Under the header of attendance, that sort of dovetails with the prior policy we just discussed. In the second paragraph, I guess the first paragraph of the attendance section, stating that regular and dependable attendance is an essential function of your job, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And what is the primary reason that regular and dependable attendance is so critical to the job at SSC?
Well, I mean, as we alluded to, and again, it's not even a secret at this point that staffing for long-term care facilities and healthcare facilities in generally is extremely challenging. And we staff to the facility to what we have available and what we can afford. But when someone doesn't show up at the last minute, then again, we have to stretch those resources out. Rarely are folks able to just come flying in at the last minute notice. They've got childcare, they have other plans, other jobs, that kind of stuff. So the more notice we have, because as I alluded to before, it's all about care delivery. And, you know, I'll say after a meal, for instance, a number of my residents that want to be laid down, go to the bathroom, what have you, it's kind of a traffic jam. And to suddenly not have enough caregivers to meet that need, particularly because someone either didn't show up and didn't have the courtesy to let us know they weren't coming, that is really, it's hard for the residents. It's also hard for morale. The coworkers get very frustrated when those things happen. It's a big deal. We know when we're a small building relatively, so people know when these things occur. And it's hard. People do the best they can. I run a very good building, I believe. But it's hard when people don't pull their weight or at least have the courtesy to say, listen, I can't be here today for whatever reason.
So would it be fair to say that unexpected absences have a negative or adverse effect on the care that can be provided to the residents?
Oh, yeah, it's devastating. It is, absolutely.
And in paragraph 6, which begins with the phrase, any time missed from work, which is not covered by vacation or other excused time off, and then it identifies a bunch of examples, then picks back up stating, is an attendance incident. Is that right?
Yes.
And that encompasses basically tardies, early departures, late arrivals, late returns from break, all the way up to full-blown absences. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in the next paragraph, it states new employees on probation are allowed 2 incidents in 90 days, with the third possibly resulting in termination. Is that right?
That's our preferred policy to the extent that, I mean, if you miss that much work that early in the career, generally those things don't play out very well. We want to work with people and life happens sometimes, but typically, that we need to start somewhere, and being consistent in our employment practices is important. So we typically do enforce that, yes.
Right. And that sort of ties back in with the fact that regular and dependable attendance is an essential function of everybody's job, correct?
Of course, yes.
And page 8. And the first paragraph under terminations reiterates the at-will nature of employment once again. Is that right?
Yes.
And the following paragraph gives several examples of conduct that will cause SSC to deem an employee to have voluntarily terminated their employment. And under sub 3, states failure to report to work on 2 consecutive scheduled work days without having called in before the end of the 2nd consecutive work day, and without an acceptable excuse. Is all of that accurate?
Yes.
And the and then in the section immediately underneath subpart 8, it again basically says the at-will employment statement, but explicitly states your employment may be terminated by Sheboygan Senior Community for any reason, including, among other things, excessive absences and tardiness. Is that right?
Yes.
And does all that ties back in with the reasons we just discussed about the importance of regular attendance? Is that fair?
Yes, that's correct. The single most important thing about being an employee is being there.
Can't argue with it. Okay, and page 9. Well, I suppose the bottom of page 8 into page 9. Right there is good. But just so we know that we're looking at the section entitled Standard of Conduct. And then on page 9, it states the following are rules or activities which, if violated, will result in disciplinary action up to and including discharge. Is that right?
Yes.
And the decision of which disciplinary measure to take, is that your call to make?
Ultimately, supervisors make those decisions personally. I try to, run a good organization and give them appropriate authority, but ultimately the decision to hire and or fire is mine. Yes.
Okay. And listed among those violations under paragraph 17. Number 17 states any act of harassment, sexual, racial, or other. Is that right?
Yes.
And going to page 10. Paragraph 24 states failure to report an absence or late arrival, excessive absence or lateness. Is that right?
Yes.
And once again, that ties back into the recurring theme of dependable, regular attendance being an essential function of the job, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And moving to page 11. And this sort of ties back in with what we just discussed about harassment or discrimination being a violation of the standard of conduct policy, but this is a specific policy directed towards conduct that is considered harassment. Is that right?
Yes.
In the second paragraph, it basically instructs employees to notify the supervisor if they believe they've been treated in an unlawful, discriminatory manner, or if they know of such behavior. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then a couple of paragraphs beneath that, it again states that same caveat that we discussed before about if you don't feel comfortable bringing your issues to your supervisor, it should be brought to a member of management who you feel comfortable talking to. Is that right?
Yes.
And it also states that that member of management or the supervisor or whomever receives the report will undertake an investigation of the allegations. Is that right?
Yes.
So that's, I believe, the second or third time that discrimination and harassment is mentioned in the handbook. So is it fair to say that SSC takes those kinds of allegations seriously?
Absolutely. I would hope every employer would, but still, as I keep saying, I run it's a smaller operation. It's important we be family-like. We take pride. We don't use agency staff. It's just us. So while I don't expect 150 people to get along perfectly, there is an expectation of professionalism. And of course, in 2021, that includes not either joking about sex, issues related to sex, sexism, race, that kind of stuff. We're just supposed to be beyond that. And so again, it's a small building I run. And so typically when we're aware of those things and people get engaged in that stuff, it kind of stands out and it's addressed.
And scrolling to the bottom of page 11, bleeding into page 12, there's a specific policy related to sexual harassment, but to sort of generalize or paraphrase, it's basically covering a lot of the same principles in the harassment section about reporting everything and making sure you speak to someone you feel comfortable with. Is that right?
Yeah, that's imperative. And the general guideline is just don't do it. Just don't bring it up because one person is joking, it's another person's offense, and just don't do it.
Right. And that if someone does do that, make sure you report it so it can be addressed, right?
Absolutely, yes. We can't be everywhere, and particularly after hours and this, at night, for instance, there's a small handful of employees. We certainly wouldn't claim to know everything that goes on. There's got to be some trusted communication.
Okay. And page 13. About halfway down, states this policy addresses the organization's open door policy. Again, is this paragraph meant to just reiterate that SSC management maintains an open door policy regarding any serious issues or inter-employee issues that may arise in the workplace?
Yeah, and again, open doors is kind of a catch-all. We're very proactive in that. We will go if there's a hint of or some. My staff will tell you if somebody just kind of makes an allegation sideways, I want to know about it. Don't just drop a little hints of that kind of stuff. It's serious. What's going on? And I think that should only keeps things above board and out in the open. And I think it's a good way to run a building. And overall, it's served me well.
Does SSC maintain a file containing records associated with all of its employees?
Yes.
And as executive director, you have access to these files?
Yes.
And documents related to hiring, such as application, letters of employment, things of that nature. Those are part of that file, correct?
Yes, fairly standard documents.
What about investigations into reported conduct violations?
Typically, anything that would be germane to an infraction or something that was so serious as be documented would all be part of that investigation. That file. Yes.
So essentially, any document that's generated and relates to that employee makes its way into the person's file, right?
I'd say yes, except perhaps the schedule, which has kept it more of a master file. But in terms of other than that, anything unique or specific to that employee is kept in that file. Yes.
Okay. And looking at Exhibit R3. And this document was previously admitted as Ms. Dent's letter of employment. Indicates that her orientation was calendared for September 30. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, that's what it states.
So as a new employee, when would her probationary period begin? On the date of her orientation or on the first actual shift work?
Typically, the day of orientation is when the clock starts, just for record keeping purposes.
Okay, so Ms. Dent would have been a probationary employee until December 30 of 16, right?
Yes.
And moving on to Exhibit R6. And do you recognize this document?
I do.
And so you've seen it before. Do you know what the information in this document relates to?
I had asked, so I came into work, I believe it was the morning of December 4th, and checked my voicemail per usual. And what was fairly unusual is to have received that first message, which is transcribed there. I asked my human resources director at the time, the aforementioned Mr. Frederick, to write down exactly what was left. And then I received a second message, obviously a couple hours later, pretty much saying nothing to see here. We wrote that message down as well.
Okay, and about 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth line down, it states, quote, "I appreciate the job here and I love it." Is that accurate?
Yes.
And that's December 4 of 2016, as we've established. The next line states, "But it is just a few of my coworkers here that are still like really kind of harassing me, and they're just really interfering with me trying to do 110% resident care for you, sir." Did I read that right?
Yes.
Did you understand what was being referred to when you heard that in the message?
I believe generally, yes, I assume.
And what type of conduct did you think was going on?
Well, in terms of the conduct itself, I wasn't, I guess, here's what I say. I'll take that back. It was unusual phrasing. Ms. Dent only worked for us for a couple of weeks, or not that long. I'd only met her a couple of times. But she had been by my office at least once before, saying how much she enjoyed working at SSC. In terms of the particular conduct from the employees, I didn't know at the time what that would pertain to. And so, of course, it caught my attention right away.
But there was no mention in there of what type of harassment or what conduct was actually interfering. Is that fair?
Yes, it is.
And a couple lines down, states again, "Because I love working here and I'm not going to quit." Is that right?
Yes.
And essentially, this first message was her requesting to have a meeting with you, or at least a discussion. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, she did leave her phone number there.
And then in the next message, that looks like it was received exactly, 5 hours and 10 minutes after that first message. Essentially, she says she doesn't need to sit down or talk to you anymore. That's right?
Yes.
So based on these two, well, strike that. The second to last sentence there, or third last rather, it's quote, "And I thank you, sir, for always having your door open." Is that right?
That was on the message, yes.
Okay. After hearing these messages, what was your understanding of what's going on?
Honestly, I thought it was kind of weird. I mean, that's not, I've worked long-term care for a long time. Like I said, I had never really had that happen before. I'd had other messages before, but not the one right away saying we don't need me after all. And again, as a new employee, particularly at night, so, it was December, so I'd only worked at SSC for less than a year. And so that was kind of thing. So that was pretty strange. And I wanted to follow up on that.
Based on this message, did you think that whatever issue she was addressing in the first message had been resolved by the time of the second message?
Sure, her message, the second message said it had been resolved, yes, and that, sure, but, so I had no immediate reason to follow up saying that she had, I'll say that had left, open, if you will, but just for me as the person in charge, it just smacked me as weird, so I want to do something about it.
Yes. So it was an unusual sort of situation that you felt you should maybe follow up on, is that right?
Yeah.
I believe, or it's my understanding, there was some sort of incident involving Ms. Dent on December 6th or 2 days after those messages were left. Do you recall whether that occurred?
I believe so, yes.
And I will ask you to take a look at Exhibit R7. And scrolling down to the top of page 23, looks like it's signed by Kathy Weninger. Have you seen this document before?
Yes.
Is that part of Ms. Dent's file?
Yes, it is.
And is this document related to the incident that may have occurred on December 6th?
Yes, we believe so.
And do you recall, I guess, in broad terms, what this incident was related to?
There was just a strange incident. There was an unusual interaction between the nurse and the CNA on the floor. And at some point within the communication, it seemed like the nursing assistant, they couldn't communicate, and she wasn't responding to regular language, and it just seemed to have kind of checked out. So
Okay. And the within Ms. Weninger's account of this incident, it looks as though, well, the first sentence says Candy had come to the workstation on Hickory and mentioned she had made a list of residents who generally get dressed, washed up for the knock shift. Is that right?
yes,
So who is Candy? Do you know?
Candace Baker was another nursing assistant working at the time.
Okay. And essentially, this statement basically arose, according to this, from Ms. Dent taking exception to Candy making this list. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
How did you learn about this incident?
I'll be honest, it was over 4 years ago. I keep saying it was a small building, so exactly what was conveyed to me and when, I just know that this had happened, that there'd been a fairly significant outcome on the floor with the newer employee. And Kathy and Candace were both upset. I don't recall exactly how that was conveyed to me. I just recall being made aware of it.
Do you remember whether Ms. Dent brought it to your attention?
I don't believe she did.
Take a look at Exhibit R9. And you've seen this document before?
Yes.
And is it part of Ms. Dent's file?
It is.
And scrolling down to the bottom of page 2 of this exhibit, I'm sorry, page 3. Looks like it was signed by Candace Baker on December 7th of 16, right?
Yes.
And moving to page 31, this I can represent would be a typed version of that handwritten statement.
Yes.
For the sole purpose of making it the handwritten statement easier to read.
That's correct.
Did you have occasion to compare this typewritten statement to the handwritten statement prior to today's hearing?
Yeah, they're identical.
Okay. But this typed version is not contained in Ms. Dent's file, correct?
I don't believe so.
Um, Given the dates associated with it, it relates to the same incident that's described in Ms. Wenninger's statement, correct?
Yes.
Now, having reviewed Ms. Dent's, I'm sorry, Ms. Baker and Ms. Wenninger's statements, do you recall whether those were largely consistent with one another?
They seem to be, yes.
We'll move on to exhibit R10. And you recognize this document?
Yes.
Looks like these are minutes from a meeting that occurred on December 8 of 16 between you, Mr. Frederick, and Ms. Dent. Is that right?
Yes.
And is this part of Ms. Dent's file?
Yes.
Do you have any memory of this meeting?
I do.
And you reviewed this document previously?
Yes.
Is this consistent with your memory of that meeting?
Yes.
So in the second paragraph there, it refers to you began with by addressing Ms. Dent's run-ins with her employer or co-workers during her last shift. Is that in reference to that incident from December 6th?
Yes, that's correct.
And states that in an effort to get to the bottom of the problem, you and apparently Brent would be talking with everyone, including Ms. Dent, to resolve the situation fairly. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And the next sentence sort of circles back to the topic that we discussed earlier about wanting to work through problems, preserve teamwork and continuity of the staff. Is that fair?
Yes, it is.
So going into this meeting, do you recall what you hope to accomplish?
Well, it was strange. We had a relatively new employee, and again, as is alluded to, had early on seemed like there's a good rapport with the different people. And then we'd had a lot of noise over, starting with the voicemails we talked about. Just a couple of days, that was on the 4th, and then we had the fairly significant run on the 6th. That was occurring at night, and so that was at that time. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. As I've said, staffing is difficult. Night staff, as I alluded to, we have a handful of people working, so it's important everybody work well together. But for a new employee to have suddenly things be going bad sideways would be something I'd be involved in, because I really want to. Because I honestly, even a year in, not just a year in, it's always important to me to get both sides of the story. There's always another side of the story. I don't want to judge, particularly as relationships are just being built. As I said, where Ms. Dent was still kind of new at the time. So this is something I would definitely then and to this day, with this kind of noise that much all of a sudden, I would be involved.
So basically you wanted to straight out any issues that were going on. You weren't there to fire or discipline anyone. Is that right?
No, it's really good to get somebody's side of the story. Again, it's funny. I mean, you talk to any of my managers, they said all the time, get the other side of the story. There's always another side of the story, and it's always worth getting it. And and there's always, it's worth the time. People's employment, how they interact, the morale we set, these things matter a lot to me. So it's worth taking the time to get it right. So you start with, okay, what happened? And sometimes they line up, other times it's very divergent, but it's always a very important part of my management style to get both sides of the story.
Okay, and Ms., in the third paragraph, it states that describing Ms. Dent's statements, and about halfway down in the paragraph, it does state that Ms. Dent felt the other CNAs treated her differently, but they thought she believed this different treatment was because they thought she and Mr. Frederick were buddies, and that Ms. Dent was a spy sent in to report back. Is that consistent with your recollection?
I know the statement was made. It struck me as odd to have had that reported, but I know that's what she talked about.
Do you recall her raising any issues about her feeling perceived racial hostility?
Well, again, I think it was alluded to there that I think there was a subtle part. I don't know the overt hostility, no, but that she didn't feel like she was fitting in. I know that part was talked about a lot.
And she felt she wasn't fitting in because of racial differences?
Potentially, yes.
And in the second, I guess it would be the third to last paragraph, technically, states, quote, Fanny shared that she had only had personal issues with a few people, but that she felt she did everything right, and the problem was with those people. Is that consistent with what you recall?
Yes.
Aside from the issues she was having with those few people, as it states there, did she otherwise tell you whether she liked her job or was otherwise happy there?
Yeah, she'd always said that she loves working there. I mean, that was the thing that was important. But then again, as I've said, it was a few people. We have a smaller number of people on night shift. It's not that hard typically to find out what's going on.
And in the last paragraph, begins by stating, you asked Ms. Dent how we could move forward and what it is she would like you to change. And then it states there was no response to that question. What was sort of the reaction to that question from what you can recall?
Again, it was a long time ago, but I just recall it was a very long period of silence because I felt like I asked a fairly open question of what do you need to see to make this right? Just not promising I could do that. I just was curious what a good outcome would be, and then there was just a long gap of silence.
And the next sentence says, Ms. Dent said she had reached a decision. Did she ever elaborate as to what that decision was?
She did not.
And then you reiterated that you wanted to find a way to work together and address the concerns. But she again responded that she had made a decision. Is that consistent with your memory?
Yes, it is.
And again, there was never any information that she provided or any interest in working through whatever issues were going on or take any specific measures to address the problem. Is that fair?
That's correct.
So it says eventually, Ms. Dent again reiterated that she'd made a decision, then got up and left. That's consistent with your memory?
Yep.
Had you excused her from the meeting or said this meeting is over or anything to that effect?
No.
So it wasn't like you reached an impasse and it was loggerheads that weren't going to move off their position. It was just she got up and left without any explanation?
No, there was definitely no closing salutation or anything like that. It was just she got up and walked out. There was nothing. Brent and I was surprised anybody. I was not. I didn't expect any of it, but that was a very surprising ending.
And the bottom of that document states, since that meeting, there has been no other communication with Ms. Dent. Do you remember whether she was scheduled to work after this December 8th meeting?
Yes, she was.
And schedules are made on a monthly basis, is that right?
Typically out monthly, but we review them daily for changes and call-ins and gaps and stuff. But yeah, I mean, so it is a very, as I alluded to at the outset, a very active part of our day is the schedule.
So a person would be familiar with their schedule for the entire month prior to that month beginning, is that right?
Certainly, yes.
After this December 8th meeting, did Ms. Dent work any of her scheduled shifts?
Nope.
Did you ultimately terminate her employment?
Later on, we did, yes.
Do you remember the date that you terminated her employment?
I don't recall the date. I know we've reviewed it recently, but it was a while later.
Would it have been before or after Christmas?
Pardon me?
Would her termination have occurred before or after Christmas?
I'm going after.
Does December 27th sound familiar?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So between the meeting on December 8th and the time that you terminated Ms. Dent on December 27th, how many shifts had she failed to show up for?
I believe it was 11 we stopped counting. Is that correct? It's 11.
So 11 no call, no shows?
Yes. Here's what I'll say. We didn't just leave those shifts open. We didn't count on her coming back. But in terms of shifts that she was scheduled and didn't call back for, indicate she wasn't coming, there was several of them, yes.
But in any case, she didn't have any prior approval not to work those shifts, right?
That's correct. Absolutely not.
And she never called in or otherwise notify SSC prior to not showing up?
Also correct.
How many CNAs are typically scheduled to work the knock shift?
Ideally, it's at least 4 and 2 nurses.
And does that translate to 1 CNA per department or section?
Yeah, usually, and there's 1 float depending on, but yes, it's a heavy ratio. It's 1 to 20. So when we lose a person, not showing up, it does definitely shift how we provide care for sure.
So no call, no shows could have a massive effect on the care you provide, correct?
Oh yeah, yes, it's devastating. But particularly after hours, it's never good. But after hours, when again, we have a smaller hand of night staff anyway, so the likelihood that one of them can come in after the shift has started to try to pick up the weight, it's just occasionally, but rarely. Usually, if that happens, you're on your own.
And sort of circling back to what we discussed about the handbook, to reiterate, 2 consecutive no call, no shows would be grounds for a voluntary termination, correct?
Yes.
Excessive absences is also grounds for an involuntary termination, correct?
Yes.
3 attendance incidents is also grounds for termination for probationary employees. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the standard of conduct policy also provides that excessive absence is grounds for termination under that policy. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So under any or all of those policies, would 11 consecutive unexcused absences violate those policies and provide grounds for termination, in your opinion?
Every which way, yes. 11 would be far, far more than we would ever accept.
So was the basis upon which you terminated Ms. Dent for violations of any or all of those policies?
Yes, primarily the two no call, no shows just at the outset. Everyone after just kind of reaffirmed that she'd been on the schedule and didn't show up. But as was said in the policy, typically after two would have been grounds for termination.
Right, but you didn't in fact terminate her after the two, correct?
That's correct.
Why did you allow her the chance to show up for her next shift?
Well, honestly, at the time, I think, our first go-to move, it was such an unusual circumstance, wouldn't be to do the termination as much as try to figure out what's going on. I mean, things were happening pretty rapidly at the time. We know we'd have the right and the privilege to terminate later, but at the moment, it was just like, what's happening? Why is this person that days ago was saying how much she loved working here is suddenly just gone? And what are we going to do to get our night shifts covered now?
So your first instinct wasn't to fire, obviously, then, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what, as I've alluded to it several times now. We are pretty flexible. We work pretty hard to keep people there, even on the tenuous circumstances, because even if we can make it go, it's better than not trying, because staffing is just always that tight, even during pandemic.
So I will have you take a look at Exhibit R13. You recall receiving this document?
Yes.
And the file stamp indicates it was received on February 6th of 17, right?
Yes.
Going to the next page where it shows the charge of discrimination. The bottom indicates January 12th of 2017 was the date that it was signed. Is that right?
Yes.
So you received notice of this complaint you received the complaint itself rather, sometime between January 12th of 17 and February 6th of 17. Would that be fair?
Yes.
I'm going back to Exhibit R12. This is the EEOC notice charge of discrimination. It's file stamped December 22 of 2016. Is that correct?
Yep.
Was this document here the first communication you had received from Ms. Dent since that December 8th meeting?
Yes, it was.
So there was never any contact, never any request for leave or an excuse given for why she wasn't showing up for her scheduled shifts?
That's correct.
Prior to your meeting on December 8th, did Ms. Dent ever tell you she was having problems specifically with Ms. Weninger?
No.
Did anybody else bring that to your attention that Benny or Ms. Dent had told them that there were some problems between Ms. Dent and Ms. Weninger?
No.
Was Ms. Dent employed at SSC at the time of your December 8th meeting?
Yes.
So going back then to Exhibit R13, page 39. In the box stating dates discrimination took place, it lists the latest date of discrimination as December 6th of 16, correct?
Yes.
And then in the box below that, the last sentence of paragraph marked as number 1 states that Ms. Dent informed HR she could not continue working with her supervisor and that shortly thereafter I was terminated. Is that right?
That's what the statement says, yes.
Right. So if the latest date of discrimination was December 6th, that's not accurate, right?
Couldn't have been, no. I mean, it just based on the timing.
Right, because if she was still employed on December 8th, but it says that the latest act of discrimination was December 6th, those dates don't line up, right?
I don't believe so, no.
And last thing I'll have you look at is Exhibit R14. You could scroll down to the bottom of this exhibit. I believe there's one more page underneath that. It'd be page 43. So that's, as you saw, it was a 3-page document. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And the signature there is Ms. Wenninger's, right?
Yes.
Do you know when you were given this document by Ms. Wenninger?
I believe we requested this to respond as part of the response to the allegation or the complaint that was filed.
So sometime in early 2017,
Yes.
and that was made part of Ms. Dent's file, is that right?
Yes.
Did you ever discuss this document with Ms. Wenninger?
I guess after it was received, certainly not beforehand. We didn't, in terms of, here's what I'll say, the level of detail that was provided, I was not aware of some of those particular interactions as she called them out. But we talked about it at the time.
And throughout this document, she references a number of other CNAs who had been complaining about negative interactions with Ms. Dent. Were any of those brought to your attention prior to this statement?
Well, as I alluded to, I think, that it was not, it had become apparent that there was issues with the newer CNA on nights. So this is a long time ago. In terms of what I was aware of exactly when, I wouldn't swear to that. But I knew that there had been some issues. Not really to this level, showing not the language is talked about here, the specific religious allegations. It's the kind of stuff that just, were I aware of it, wouldn't be going on.
Okay. So to be clear, the first you became aware that Ms. Dent may be having problems specifically would have been those phone messages from December 4.
Yes, that's correct.
And after that, after receiving that message and another incident, you met with her in an attempt to figure out how to fix whatever is wrong.
So as to get to the bottom of it, ideally fix it. It's whatever's wrong if it's fixable. But at the time, I wasn't even sure what was going on.
Right.
But ideally, yes, you want to keep it employed. That's the first go-to is, can you make it work?
Right. And you had no intent of issuing any discipline at that time or otherwise punishing her for anything related to her employment at that time. Is that right?
No, as I alluded to the outset, I'll say that I had some negative lessons about this when I was a young administrator. So I'm always adamant about getting the other side of the story. Never will a decision be made in that room in that moment. I don't do it that way. We'll always get this, we'll think it over, we'll write it down, we'll call you back, something else like that. But never will it be just right now, this is all happening. I just don't do it that way.
Were you ever made aware of meetings between Ms. Dent and Mr. Frederick during his and her employment at SSC?
No.
And finally, back at this time, was Ms. Dent the only Black or African American CNA employed by SSC?
No.
Has it ever been the case that all the CNAs are non-Black or non-African American?
Last as I worked there.
That's all that I have. I would move to have all of the exhibits that were previously admitted into evidence.
I think the ones that I've had testimony about since Ms. Dent testified were 2, 7, 9, 12, and 14. There was a number of exhibits that we haven't had any testimony about. I think
Right.
that's 15 through 21. I don't think there's been any testimony about.
In the 21. Okay, are those the only ones that haven't been admitted?
Yeah, Ms. Dent, did you have any objections to my receiving respondents 2, 7, 9, 12, and 14? Ms. Dent, can you hear me?
I think she was
Yes, ma'am,
muted.
I can hear you, and no.
Okay,
Go
so then,
for it.
okay, those exhibits are then received. And then Attorney Hastings, you were asking about then everything else besides exhibits 15 through 21 have been received. So exhibits 15 through 21, I have not received. Ms. Dent, did you have any questions for Mr. Hastings or for Mr. Trufford?
Oh, no, ma'am.
All right, then Mr. Trufford, I think you are free to leave. Thank you for your testimony.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good morning.
You
Good
too.
afternoon at this point. Thank you.
Attorney Hastings, are you going to call your other witness?
No,
All right, so then you are resting then?
yes.
All right, Ms. Dent, is there anything else you want to testify about, particularly anything that you heard Mr. Trufford testify about that you would like to address at this time? That would be your rebuttal at this time, Ms. Dent.
Your Honor, at this time, no. This has been over 5 years and 3 hours. I'm grateful.
All right.
I'm grateful. Thank you
All
kindly.
right. All right, then since there's no other evidence, like I said, I am receiving all the documents into the record other than respondents 15 through 21, so everything else is received. I will take into consideration the testimony that Ms. Dent offered as well as Mr. Trufford offered. And I will be issuing a written decision. I try to get those out in the next 2 to 3 months. So if anybody's contact information and address changes before then, just let us know so we can make sure that everybody gets the decision. Any questions, Ms. Dent, about the process then or anything?
No, and I thank everyone kindly. God bless you all.
Sure, thank you. And Attorney Hastings, any questions about anything before I let you go?
I would just note on that the last thing that you mentioned about contact information, I believe the address that Ms. Dent provided today is different than the one that was previously on file. So just so everyone's on the same page about that.
I noticed
Yes.
that as well.
Do you need the address again? Do you
No,
want me to give
I think I wrote it down somewhere.
Yeah, I have
Let me
Okay.
611 North Water Street, number 207. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
611 North Water Street, apartment 207, here in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, 53081.
All right, yes, I did write that down. Thank you. And
Okay.
I will make sure to
Mhm.
update our records to include that address. Thanks again.
Okay.
As long as there's not anything else from either party, I will go ahead and close the record and end the hearing. So thank you both for calling in and connecting this morning and this early part of the afternoon. Take care and thanks again for your time today.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you kindly. Have a blessed day, everyone.
All right, thank
You
you, Ms.
too.
Dunn. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mhm.